Putin affirms country's readiness to implement joint investment programs. IBED warns that tariffs have rerouted trade. And ESCWA projects Arab region's economy to grow by 3.7% in 2026 and 3.3% in 2027. Welcome to our economic news bulletin. We start off with Europe, where the European Commission has announced that it will launch the East Invest Facility, a new initiative aimed at providing easier access to loans and financial support for EU countries bordering Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. The East Invest Facility will bring together the European Investment Bank, the EIB Group, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and Nordic Investment Bank, the Council of Europe Development Bank, and National Promotional banks from 9 member states: Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. The facility aims to address economic and security challenges from Russia's conflict with Ukraine and is expected to mobilize 28 billion euros in public and private investments to support regional development, trade, and security. Russian President Vladimir Putin has affirmed his country's readiness to implement joint scientific, educational, and investment programs in the fields of bioeconomy within the framework of the BRICS group serving global development. Putin stated that biotechnology powered by computing and artificial intelligence is advancing rapidly in addressing challenges like climate change, food shortages, and resource depletion. He called for a national bioeconomy strategy through 2050 with tax incentives and inter-ministerial coordination to boost GDP contributions. Putin further emphasized ethical controls, data security, and training skilled personnel via updated vocational programs and regional university-linked engineering centers. In the UK, a survey by YouGov for US Bank City has revealed that British public's expectations for inflation over the coming year and further ahead fell sharply in February. Short-term inflation expectations fell to 3.3% in February from 3.8% in January, while long-term expectations fell to 3.6% from 4.1%. Citibank noted that despite the volatility in recent months, there may be cautious reason for optimism that the move this month may be something of a level shift. Bank said the survey was clearly dovish for Bank of England interest rates. In Asia, former Bank of Japan chief Haruhiko Kuroda has stated that the country should keep raising interest rates and tighten fiscal policy, warning that Premier Sania Takashiti's large spending plan could stoke inflation and lift bond yields. He noted that solid growth and steady wages allow the BOJ to raise rates twice yearly in 2026 and 2027, and while innovation support is sensible, spending to offset living costs would be counterproductive. Kuroda further praised Governor Ueda's cautious approach and said that the yen may be somewhat too weak given Japan's growth and competitiveness. South Korea's central bank has kept its benchmark interest rate at 2.5%, signaling the policy is likely to remain unchanged for the next 6 months. Strong chip exports and steady inflation give policymakers time to monitor financial stability risks. The Bank of Korea also raised its GDP growth forecast for 2026 to 2% from 1.8%, citing stronger than expected chip exports. Governor Ri Chang-yong said that these are conditional views at this time, with only a small chance of a rate change over the next 6 months. The U.S. Mortgage Bankers Association has reported that mortgage rates fell sharply last week, boosting refinancing, though home buyer demand seemed unimpressed. Total mortgages applications were nearly flat, up 0.5% from the previous week. The average rate for 30-year fixed mortgages with typical balances dropped to 6.1% from 6.2%, with points falling to 0.5%, the lowest since September 2022. Refinance applications rose 4% week over week and were more than double compared with last year when rates were higher. Purchasers' mortgages applications fell 5% for the week but were up 12% year over year.
Less heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere produce less warming.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul has urged U.S. President Donald Trump administration to refund tariff payments estimated at $13.5 billion to New Yorkers. She stated that these senseless and illegal tariffs were merely a tax on New York consumers, small businesses and farmers, and that was why she was demanding a full refund. She added that some New York farmers reported that their business expenses face increases of up to $20,000 annually due to higher equipment and supply costs, while milk exports in the state have fallen by 7%.
Good morning, Governor. How are you? Good to see you. Great morning. I never had that much.
Reuters reported that the Pentagon has asked defense contractors to assess their reliance on Anthropic ahead of its Friday deadline for the AI service provider to respond to a request to eliminate safeguards. Talks are continuing after a meeting between the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei. During the meeting, Hegseth warned that if Anthropic did not comply, the Pentagon would take action against it, with options including labeling it a supply chain risk or invoking a law that would force Anthropic to change its rules. Moreover, a senior Pentagon official said that the Office of the Secretary of War is preparing to execute any decision that the Secretary might make on Friday regarding Anthropic. U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer has emphasized that Section 301 investigations will anchor the administration's strategy targeting excess capacity, forced labor, discrimination against U.S. tech firms, and product subsidies. He added that he and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have repeatedly pressed Chinese officials over state support for unprofitable firms. Greer also said Section 301 probes will help enforce recent trade deals, including Indonesia's agreement to accept a 19% U.S. tariffs and expand market access for American goods. He noted that the Trade Representative's office will open an investigation into Indonesia's industrial capacity and fisheries subsidies to assess whether it is meeting its commitments under the agreement.
Quite constructive discussions with our Chinese counterparts, and we think we're getting to a point where we have something we can present.
On tariffs, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD, has stated that the U.S. tariffs have rerouted trade but not dented it as much as feared, allowing larger than expected economic growth in certain developing markets. Growth in the 40 countries covered by the Development Finance Institution rose by a larger than forecast 3.4%, but the bank warned that continued trade turmoil could yet derail growth in some of the economies. The bank now expects 3.6% growth this year and 3.7% in 2027, both a 0.2 percentage point upward revision compared with its autumn projections. In the MENA region, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESCWA, has projected the Arab region's economy to grow by 3.7% in 2026 and 3.3% in 2027, with inflation falling from 8.2% in 2025 to 5.4% in 2026. Due to lower oil prices and easing supply chain disruptions. It warned that the region remains vulnerable to shocks, geopolitical instability, conflicts, Red Sea trade disruptions, global trade uncertainty, U.S. tariffs, and potential Israel-Iran tensions. ESCWA also cautioned that middle-income countries face ongoing challenges and low-income states contend with fiscal constraints, declining aid, and conflicts like the war in Sudan. The Commission urged governments to diversify economies, boost public finances, invest in human capitals, and digitalizing and align aid with national priorities, especially in conflict zones. That brings us to the end of our economic news bulletin, but before we wrap up, here is a quick recap of what we've been covering. Putin affirms countries' readiness to implement joint investment programs. EBRD warns that tariffs have rerouted trade. And ESCWA projects Arab region's economy to grow by 3.7% in 2026 and 3.3% in 2027. That's all for today's economic news roundup. Many thanks for joining us and stay informed, stay ahead. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY. Many thanks for watching.